Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the very first day of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy Series. This is a very important battle. It's a series of games marking who is the best football academy in all of the land. And it starts with the Air Force versus the Navy coming up here in 2 weeks, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday at Navy Marine Corps Stadium. And tonight we are going to discuss what this game means and what it means in the series of games between all of the academies. So if this is your first night joining us, I'm Harrison Bernstein. I'm founder and executive director of Soldiers to Sidelines, and I'm so happy to be here with you all tonight to moderate this discussion on football, fellowship, and leadership. And with us tonight is our guest representing the Naval Academy. Osei Asante is a native of Houston, Texas, attended the U.S. Naval Academy, and lettered for 2 years on the football team as left guard. He graduated from Annapolis in 2010, where he earned his BS in general science with a minor in football, as he likes to say. He was elected offensive team captain in 2009, along with Ross Popsil. How do you say his last name?
Pospisil.
Pospisil. Ross Pospisil was his co-captain. And Osei served as a selected surface warfare officer and has done the majority of his sea tours on the West Coast, San Diego, California, and Everett, Washington. He has served on the following ships: the USS McCluskey, the USS Lake Champlain, the USS Kidd, and the USS Mobile Bay. He's currently stationed at Engineering Assessments Pacific and served as a project officer. He's married to Cassie, who's also a Naval Academy grad of 2011, and he has 2 kids, Kensley and Marshall, who's age 6. And I just want to say, Osei, my brother's name is Marshall. That's an awesome name. So
Awesome.
thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you, Harrison, and thank you to your program and giving me the opportunity, as well as Myles. Even though he's an Air Force grad, I still got to give him props. But this is still a true honor and a blessing to be here. I truly appreciate this time.
Well, can't wait to get into the discussion with you, Osei. And so also joining us tonight representing the Air Force Academy is Myles Morales, who was born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, and graduated Madison High School. So he joined, he actually went to the prep school, the Air Force prep school, and then graduated the United States Air Force Academy in 2010. He played his senior year as a defensive tackle, but depending on the front, sometimes he's a defensive end. I'm sure he wants to be called defensive. Everyone wants to be a defensive end and not a defensive tackle. So Myles was a pass rusher and an elite pass rusher, as you will all see tonight. He is currently a commander as a communications officer, and he has already deployed once to the Middle East. So we have 2 active duty folks here representing, getting ready to talk football and fellowship. So thanks for being here, Myles.
Absolutely. Truly a pleasure. Thank you so much. I feel honored to be a part of this organization and just kind of bring back some of those memories. I know, some of the things that we like to suppress is the ones that are most impactful to us. So bringing up some of these feelings and going back down memory lane is great. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, we're going to do exactly that, Myles. We're going to go down memory lane right now. And kind of one of the processes in these Commander-in-Chief Trophy Series webinars that we do is we dig out film from the archives and we jog y'all's memory. And we are going to first start off here, and I'm going to share my screen. And this is Osei Asante starting at left guard against Notre Dame. And in 2009, I can say this, Navy put a whooping on Notre Dame. So please excuse us, any Notre Dame fans, but we're clearly Academy fans. So I'm going to share my screen. Ready?
Looks
good?
good.
Perfect.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so let's take a look here. We got Osei right here on the 1-yard line. They drove the entire field. You can see this is the first drive of the game. It is 4th and goal. And before we hit play, Osei, talk to us real quick about what is the mindset that you have when you line up right now, 4th and goal, got to have it from the 1-yard line. you know Navy's running the ball and probably your side. What is going through your mind here?
So this is one of those things that as an offensive lineman, you're just like, you have to do your best to get leverage, to get underneath the other guy's pads and get him out of the way. The one thing that we always preach is movement. From Coach Niamatololo as my first offensive line coach, you got to get movement. It doesn't matter if that's, I'm not like a no-star recruit or a five-star recruit that's, playing at Notre Dame or playing at Towson. You got to be able to get that guy out of the way, whatever you have to do. So my mindset is that in that sense right there is I got to beat this guy and I have to move him out of the way right now.
So let's go ahead and see you do that.
Navy recovery of the Notre Dame football. 4th and goal. Dobbs keeps for the touchdown.
They got a little push there now, which is still legal from his fullback Vince Murray, but really in a.
So there it is. The commentators even said it, like big push there. Got to have it. What is it? So Osei, who is that guy that you're going against that you just drove 3 yards into the end zone?
I couldn't tell. At one point, I know we discussed earlier, it might have been Ian Williams, who was a stud defensive tackle. I'm not sure where he was drafted in the NFL, but I know he played for the 49ers at one point. And because I remember, I was like, man, I had to block that guy at one point, and I remember him being this stud athlete. And I'm like, how am I on the same field with this guy? But that chip on my shoulder always told me, say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter who he is. I've been coached well. I have the mentality that nobody's going to beat me. If they do, then it's on me. So I knew at that point, like, hey, this guy's got to get moved. We need this touchdown. We're going to make a statement right now.
Awesome. So here's another statement that we're going to see. So we just watched you drive an NFL 3 yards into the end zone. So now we're going to go and we're going to share this. See what this brings up. So now 7-0.
Are they disciplined? And they seem to do everything right. Teach, who's the fullback.
There we go. This is the replay. Here you are, Osei. Getting out.
A little counter option.
Boom.
Good block by Asante. And it's the first one they really got out on the perimeter,
Yeah.
Tom. It's tough yards in the inside, but if you can get some pitches on the.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so
that's a staple of your offense.
Yeah, so as an offensive guard at the Naval Academy, you got to be able to move. You got to be able to pull. So that was, I think that was, might have been out of spread. So that's spread 16, as a pulling guard backside. My first key is number 1 inside. It looks like the tackle was attempting to outside release, got a little piece of him. And for me, I'm supposed to get to his outside leg to cut him off, but in this case, I couldn't. So my instinct at that time was just get something on him to slow him down so I can set the edge for Teach there. And as you can see, Teach was a sophomore at the time. Alex Teach got to the edge and got some yardage out of that. So one of my favorite plays is to pull between, trap, that one, that's a fullback option. And of course the A-back option, which is 18.
Yeah. And you did stop him. You just had to get a piece. You literally collapsed that dude. You brought 2 guys down with you. I mean, and like that's the kind of like the thing. And I think that's where offensive line teaching has really gone now. It's almost like if you could just get them to stop even for a little bit, like you don't necessarily have to get the full reach. You buckle his legs, you have the corner anyway,
Exactly. That's all it takes. Of course, we want to get them to the ground. We want to be able to cut them off. But at the end of the day, just like you said, you got to get a piece of them. And I don't even remember getting a 2-for-1 on that one. But I got to pat myself on the back there for getting a 2-for-1.
You're out in space. I love it when your guard wins.
Oh, yeah.
So, hey, we're going to check you out backed up. Okay, so now there's, again, no space. And this is an even different mindset. So we're going to show a play here where you're on your -1 yard line, back to the end zone. It's 1st and 10 in the 4th quarter. You're up 21-7, okay? And this is a big deal because, Notre Dame's probably thinking right now in this instance, they're like, okay, we got them backed up. We can stop them. We can get a safety. We can get the ball back. If we make them punt here, we can make this 21-14 right away. So here we are. Here you are. What are you thinking? Osei, backed up on the 1 yard line.
It's a similar mindset to if the field was flipped 99 yards. If we're on the 1 yard line, on Notre Dame's 1 yard line, well, it's the same thing. The one thing we cannot have again on this play is penetration, because we could potentially allow for a safety, and that's a big no-no, because like you said, we have the lead, we're up 2 touchdowns, and at this point we're like, hey, we've got them by the back of the neck, and we're not going to let go. So in this case, I know for a fact, like, hey, we have them, we're going to keep going, and I'm still going to just drive my feet, get them out of the way, and get that movement that I was taught.
Well, let's look at Osei right here. This is how you know that times have changed, because in 2009, it still kind of looks like 1999 on the high definition. But here's Osei right here. Okay, and you can see he's got an inside shade defensive lineman right here. Right, and this is going to be great when we turn this over to Myles, because then Myles is going to start telling us what's it like when you're down in this, right? So this is Osei right here, backed up. We'll let the tape roll. All right, that's already an ass kicking. If you see him, he just drove down, and this is a future NFLer that is getting body slammed. Not a hold. Just an ass kicking.
Fullback. Murray breaking free. Sergio Brown rides him down at the 40-yard line, but 39 yards from the
They
one.
have just eaten up the Irish on the ground.
Just eating them up. What are your thoughts there, Osei? Respond to that.
Yeah, that's it's giving me chills, actually. In order, to have that kind of play spring, for us in South Bend, me, kind of tying it all together, and, being like a no-star recruit, not getting the opportunity at, other big schools, to do that and to see my, hard work and dedication, to move that guy out of the way at all means, at all costs. It doesn't matter if I move him, an inch, or if I move him, 6 yards. I prepped that play, and I got that play to where it needs to be, to where I can open up that lane for Vince, and he can spring off a big run like that. So that is that's huge.
That is huge. I loved watching your game film, and of course, as you know, it's hard to pick just 3 plays. And before we got on tonight, folks, I wanted to tell everybody, when you're a starting guard or a starting interior offensive lineman at one of the academies, every play is a highlight film if you win, because all you do is run the ball. You're either down blocking, you're cutting linebackers off, or you're pulling, and that's what it was. Fantastic. Now, it can be a nightmare if you're a defensive lineman on the other side of the ball, because this is going to be a fist fight. And Myles and I were just talking, because this week coming up, the Air Force Academy plays Wyoming, and then face off with Navy, right? And those games are just a little bit different. So Myles, before I tee you up, can you just talk a little bit about like how big of a game it is this weekend, but why the Navy game is just so different?
Yeah, I think so. Wyoming just came off a big win, beating Fresno, and so we just knew that was going to be kind of the season-setting game, like, and knowing like what we're going to go up against next week. But the thing that's different about the rivalry with Navy is when we think about like our rivalries and our opponent, we think about like what's worthy of respect, and it's having like a challenging opponent. And so like whenever I watch those plays, that Osei is just dominating on the field. It just like it makes you, it makes you respect, who you're going against every one of those plays, and it just you feel it more, and it means just that much more whether you win or lose it. And so I think that, like, for me, that's kind of what comes up.
And what about the preparation? Because the game we're about to watch with you is versus University of New Mexico. Okay, Mike Loxley was the head coach at that time, right? And you had 2 sacks in this game, and we're going to get to him. We're going to see him. But you get to pass rush. when you play the Naval Academy, you ain't getting sacks. No offense, because it has nothing to do with you. It's the Naval Academy. You got 3 pass plays in the game. Talk to me about your mindset.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're preparing for Navy, you know, like Osei said, it's all about that initial hit and who's going to give up what. And so, you know, that leverage, that alignment, like it's basically just a game of inches and a game of leverage. So, if you're an inch lower than your opponent, then you know you're feeling okay, but you immediately know if you are not in the right position, and it's that immediate feedback. And so when you prepare for the game, it's just an absolute mentality where you know that you have to trust every single one of your teammates that they're going to do their assignment, and you know that you're going to do your assignment. So lining up against those guys, because you know they're going to come at you, and you expect them to be perfect. You expect their footwork to be perfect, and so you have to have that pressure on yourself, knowing that you got to be the same way. And so and then at that point, it's like who's got the most grit and most attitude, and who's gonna fight the hardest.
Certainly, because it's got to be like a fight in a phone booth where you get a little bit more space versus New Mexico. So we're going to show this here, and you know this as I share my screen. This is the Air Force Academy versus New Mexico, and I pull you up this play. You don't necessarily make this play here, but you make this play. And you talk about trusting your teammates. You could not have queued up this clip any better, because for the folks on this call that aren't so familiar with defensive line play, defensive line run stunts, which they call games. And sometimes your job is to set a pick or slant or move so that one of your other teammates can come free and then make the play. And sometimes you're the one that gets to make the play, and sometimes you have to sacrifice. And as a coach, this is an awesome play by Myles, who's lined up right here, okay, on this defensive end position.
Down the third-ranked Sooners. I think the key to those signature wins is they're only as important.
You see that?
As your next victory. Another pick for Air Force. And Davis has his 3rd of the night. Pardon me, Anthony Wright with the 3rd pick of the night for the Falcons secondary. John Davis has a pair, and now Anthony Wright picks one up.
So we have to go back. Let's look at this one more time, Myles. Talk to me about this stunt here.
Yeah, so when they're, I mean, basically, yeah, we already know we're going in, and so like when you line up, you're looking at those those keys, the alignment, and then just like knowing what your assignment is, and so I already know that based on like this type of play, like cutting in is probably either gonna take me out of the play, but I'm like just focusing on drawing in and trying to take at least double bodies if I can, so that way you can free up that outside linebacker. And then just put our guys in position. So if I can put that little bit of pressure, disrupt that quarterback's tempo, that can get our DBs in their position to make a play. And we're just like super lucky this year because like A-Wright, you know, he's coaching back at the Air Force Academy now, but he was a phenomenal player, and he actually had some big. He was the only one that scored during the Navy game our senior year. And so I don't know, we're gonna talk about that a little bit later, but it's phenomenal. And so we just knew if we do our assignments, we know that the guys behind us are going to do their assignments and make magic happen. So
that's what it is. And you guys affect the passer, right? So it's about affecting the passer that causes this interception. He throws off time in a location that he doesn't want. And like you said, it's trusting your teammates to be in the right place at the right time. Even if you're not the one that is making the play, you're still making the play. Watch again.
Sooners. I think the key to those signature wins.
Boom, and there's the wrap. So this is the opposite defensive end.
Is there only
coming across, and then
as important
linebacker putting the pressure.
As your next victory, another pick for Air Force. and Davis has his third of the night.
Unbelievable. So then let's see how that gets you to this. So that was unselfish, and this is still unselfish, but sometimes you get called. Here we go. Here's Myles right there. So your number.
Staff to call on as other
Oh boy.
head coaches.
There's no question they're not lacking in leadership and experience and know-how on this coaching staff.
And that's the rush. That's the speed rush. And again, affecting the quarterback being
Leadership and experience and know-how on this coaching staff. And
so your initial upfield rush causes him to step up into the defensive line that really wasn't getting the rush, but he had nowhere to go but in there. So talk to me about your use of the speed rush, because that's what you were using right there.
Yeah, so depending on our scheme, we want to really just like create, we want to capture the every angle of the quarterback really, and just so that way we create that pressure. We have greats like Ben Garland right there in the middle, and so we know as long as we can push that quarterback up, we know like Benji, our middle linebackers, they're going to put some pressure and make a big play. And so it's just, again, it's making sure that they have nowhere else to go. We don't lose contain and just push them into our strengths.
Yeah, look at that. Whoop. And it just collapses where these two guys just can make the play, and your relentless pursuit. I mean, you would have had the sack then anyway if they don't just run into the teeth of that defensive line. Awesome. So then here it comes. This is the pressure. This is the pressure. Okay. So this play, 139, we did there. Here we go.
Former New Mexico wide receiver Hank Basket. 1st and 10. Play action. He slipped.
But look at you shed 2 blocks right here. So you literally get the credit for this sack. Let's go back and see this. Up 139. As you saw that. What are your thoughts here, Myles?
1st and 10.
Yeah, so, right here, I believe basically just trying to make sure that that we know our assignments and just like staying in our gaps, and just like reading the play, and so I think that just knowing that this is we're kind of like in their area, we're just trying to make sure that we do our assignments and just execute as necessary.
Well, you split this double team here, and like, if he doesn't fall, I mean, you are walloping him. And since you're first to the point, you get the sack. And then it's just building. So like, as you can see, as we get deeper into this game, it's setting itself up for this to be just devastating. And here it is.
Cannon working at left guard now. Holbrook gets drilled, and that pass will fall incomplete.
What did that feel like?
Yeah, I remember. I just knew, like going in, like we're doing a lot of stunts this game, and you're either gonna be met with a double team, you're gonna have to just split them or take them down. But this one, I just remember I was gonna cut in hard, and I was just gonna keep going, and I just remember lowering my shoulder and just feeling it. But I don't know. I think that one took him out of the game.
It was devastating. Yeah, it did take him out of the game. He came with that tomahawk on the arm. He tried to reach out and just hawked that thing down. And then lastly, we get to this, and it just, what a day you had this day. I'm getting lined up.
Six carries for 53 yards for Dennis. The majority of those came in the first quarter. When they fell behind big, they basically had to abandon the run. Another drop by Morales, his second sack of the game.
What was that? Talk to me about this.
Yeah, I think as we were kind of making it down, like there's a level of confidence you start to know, like as you start to like learn your opponent on both sides. And again, I just think that like when you know what your assignment is, and you know that your footwork's gonna be good, I think, and you just execute, you just go in. But again, like whenever we're working with folks like like Ben Garland in the middle, like he's gonna do his steps, and you're not gonna have to slow down because he's gonna get in the position that he needs, and that way we can come around or cut through with ours. And so it's just like for us, it's like a methodical, like it's just beautiful.
So do you call yourself a defensive end in this front or defensive tackle? Be honest.
Yeah, primarily defensive end. Yeah, because we got our outside linebackers out there. So our interior guys are since it was a 3-4 front. Yeah, we just consider ourselves a defensive end.
Yeah, I know. Consider yourself, but you still have to line up over those big dudes. If you're covered down on both ends, it's a different world, right? Being on the edge and then being covered, it's a different game. And not only that, you stunt to the A gap and then put on the swim move, right? So if Navy ever passed the ball, you can trying to do this on Osei. So Osei, what happens if somebody tries to interior swim you? Like, we don't have to call out Myles right here, but if you start to see this move from an outside shade to stunt the A gap with a swim, what has typically been your response?
As soon as that goes down, my hands, if I'm beat, and he knocks my hands down, is to reset him as quick as possible. If I'm only able to get one up, I'm looking at my, in this case, my left side, and he's coming inside. I'm looking at my left arm, and I'm going to jab it pretty much right in his armpit, and just try to wash him down as far as possible if he's going to do that. So using his momentum against him and sending him down inside, so the quarterback can at least sidestep or step up or what have you, get around them.
Awesome. So we just watched 2 games where you guys shining against, Power 5 schools, quite frankly, right? And it's just different now when you play in academy. So as you get ready to play each other, Osei, spend some time reflecting on, if you can recall, the time when you played Air Force your year. And can you recall any moments where you may have caught Myles inside stunting on you?
I think this is that's a great question, Harrison. To start, Air Force Week is it's very underrated. And I think a lot of people don't realize how difficult Air Force is to play like year in and year out. You can see it now, like they are studs now. And when Air Force pops up, that's like the first game we look for. We can have Notre Dame on there. We can have, of course, my year we had Ohio State. We had Rice, SMU. But we circle that Air Force game because that's the first leg in the CIC trophy chase. And in this case, we are like, you know what, we got to get these guys again. So we methodically, proceed through the season, and then once Air Force Week pops up, it's different. It is a very aggressive. It's very, very like it's a pissed off mentality that we go into. We like to use whatever ammunition that we have that Air Force can bestow upon us. Sometimes they'll be caught in the media saying things about us, and sometimes it's probably not all true. It's probably some made up stuff by the coaches just to get our engines going, which is a great tactic if you ask me. But we just go in with a very, very aggressive, but also at the same time is very sound, because we know we have to rely on our technique, because we know it's going to be a knockdown, drag out fight every single time. It is. However, whoever can play with the best technique, like Myles was talking about, when you're using your swim move, when your footwork is good, you have to be able to hone in on those skills, going back to fall ball, spring ball, to be able to beat these guys. Because you have one misstep, you have a wrong read, it could spring for a big play, and that could be it to win or lose the game. So in this case, for me, I'm like, hey, I got to go into this game very sound, very, very aggressive, but be able to maintain control of myself. Because if I get myself out of control, I'm getting too loose on the field, then I'm going to start losing my technique, and that could cost us. So, a very aggressive but sound approach anytime we're playing Air Force.
Awesome. So, Myles, what do you like best about this game, the Navy Air Force game? When you go against Navy, what's your favorite part of this week?
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I mean, you know it's just going to be one heck of a game to watch, and you really don't know what the outcome's going to be. You just know that you're going to play as hard as you can. Um, yeah, and so I think just like many of the things that Osei said, when it comes down to discipline and effort, you know it's going to be there. I mean, you know both sides of the ball, and it's a game of mistakes. The smallest mistakes are gonna either win the game or lose the game for you. And I know our senior year, that's what the name of the game was. I think both offenses, right, were I mean, it was a low scoring game. The only score we had was A right, picking it and running it back. And so when I just think of that game, I just think about every single play was just you just knew it was going to be the hardest fight, and you just were going to give it your all.
Awesome. And before we start to spin this more towards those lessons and how it comes into leadership in your service now, I just want to let you guys know, like in the audience right now is Coach Terry Mackey, who is a Hall of Fame football player for the Air Force Academy, and sat right in your shoes, Myles. I don't just last year, or was it the year before? But he was one of the originals on this Commander-in-Chief Trophy series, and man, he had some unbelievable highlights, just thugging dudes. So that being said, these moments, your training in football, how has your football training and experience from practice and the weight room and everything else influenced you or prepared you for service after football? Myles?
Yeah, and so what I love about football is, I mean, similar to life in any challenge, like you really don't get to pick your opponent. And so when it comes to like that discipline that you have to have in the weight room, like when you're thinking about, hey, this is not fun, or when you want to give up and you just think in the back of your mind, well, that X player or whoever we're going to play, or that OC that we're going to be lining up against next week, they're probably doing one more rep. And so I think, that perseverance and that mindset of drive that you're going to take on any challenge head on and push your limits and just always try to get better is just one of those things that I think I really learned from football, and I carry on because as we go through, like on deployments, things like that, right? Like there's so many unknowns, and so you just like you practice and you control what you can control, and you be the best at the things that are underneath your wheelhouse and your skill set. And so I think that I apply that.
Awesome. Osei, what's your reaction to that? Like, how has your training through the Naval Academy, on the football field, in the weight room, prepared you for your service?
I think it's kind of twofold for me, because I started playing football at the age of 8, and had the team mentality instilled in me very, very early on. I'm sure Myles can attest to it as well. But you go through Pee Wee or Little League, and then you go through middle school. Most states, but unlike Texas, don't do middle school. But middle school football, high school football, and then you get to the Naval Academy or any academy. It's just a different mentality, because you have, number one, you're at one of the toughest institutions in the country. So you have to be able to maintain a balance that not a lot of other schools or a lot of other players have to. And it's very difficult. I can tell you right now, in my 4 years, or really 5, because I went to the prep school as well, it was always a struggle. I didn't start to figure it out till my senior year, but taking that portion of the balance of football, academics, and trying to be, a decent leader, kind of molded me into, hey, nothing's gonna crack me. Like this is easy. Fortunately for me, I was, of course, elected the captain for the '09 team, and then I had to balance that portion out too, because now I'm the face of the team along with Ross, and being able to say, hey, you know what? I have school, I have football, I have meetings, I have interviews, all this kind of stuff. To be able to balance that as a 21, 22-year-old is pretty difficult. So having that instilled in me from the jump, like, has definitely equated to how I approach my leadership skills now, is be able to maintain that balance, but also be able to instill the team mentality into whatever facet that I'm in. I just came off a department head tour where I was in charge of a department of about 75 people, and instilling that team mentality and being able to say, hey, we have to be able to balance all this stuff is key to our success. So for me, that's what it is: the team mentality, and then be able to balance what I learned from the Naval Academy.
What stands out to me when I hear you talk, Osei, is rigor. And it's the rigor of the Naval Academy, both academically, physically, right? And the expectations, and how those standards aren't getting lowered. You're either going to make it or not. And it was an opportunity. I heard you say you essentially had the opportunity to figure it out by the time you were a senior. And it was that process of figuring it out is what molded you in your leadership and resilience.
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head, Harrison. That's exactly it.
So it's not even about like essentially excelling at the academy, it's going through it. And it's like when you're going through it, it's awful because it's hard, but that's what's molding us into resilient pieces of steel that can also be flexible to handle the times. Myles, what is your reaction to that when you think about the rigor at the Air Force Academy and how that has molded you in your service now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when you first show up, a lot of us, like you come from a background of like success and stuff, and so when you first get that punch in the stomach and realize, hey, you're surrounded by a whole bunch of excellence, and the academy is a really tough place, and you're gonna fail. Like at first, it's kind of like a hard pill to swallow at times, and so I think my experience at the academy, it really has shown me how to develop and strengthen my grit in regards to not giving up, continuing to develop myself, face these challenges head on, don't avoid them, and I feel like that's kind of what comes to mind thinking about that.
Can you recall one of your hardest moments? Like, what are the most difficult moments in this journey of rigor?
Yeah, well, while I was at the Air Force Academy, I mean, honestly, it was like balancing school and priorities, and just trying to figure out. It took me similar to OC. I think, for me, I was given the opportunity a little bit later to really figure it out. I was given a lot of opportunities, and it just took me a little bit longer than I really probably should have. But I think a lot of the challenges came from me academically. It's just because initially, like my sophomore year, it took me too long to figure out that I was at the academy for more than just football, and so I think that was my first real gut check on in regards to managing everything, and really challenging my leadership on whether or not I was going to give up or I was going to keep going.
Yes, wonderful. And so we have more to discuss, but I just want to let the audience know if you have any questions for either of these two fine gentlemen, just put a question mark in the chat, and I'll ask you to unmute yourself, and we'll go ahead and let you ask those questions, because I'm sure everyone's mind is just reeling here, especially as we get excited for the first of the Commander-in-Chief Trophy Series. So now I'm going to ask a more difficult question, and it's only because it's a question you can't possibly know. However, we're going to project. So, Osei, over to you first. You get the curveball right out the gate. Your experience in rigor, in preparation through the academy, and you just told us how that has molded you into your leadership in service right now. As you project to your transition out of service and into civilian life and whatever role you take in business or sports or what have you, how do you see your military experience, right, your service right now, aiding you, helping you in your next phase of leadership eventually in civilian life?
Oh, that is a very loaded question. I think about this often because number one, at least for me, I think the Navy has gone through a significant shift in its mentality and how it trains sailors and trains officers now. So for me, coming up from where I did, as my first tour, which was a frigate, all-male ship, I had a very crusty chief who was very hard-nosed and taught me the ropes and made me tougher than I already was, as and not literally, but than I thought I was when I got to the ship. And I think, not of course for me, I was physically tough, playing Navy football, being an offensive lineman, but I had to transition from being physically tough to being, even mentally tough, and from a perspective of, hey, now I'm not, battling, Myles, for example, who's going to line up across from me on October, whatever. But now I have to deal with a sailor who has, who's getting a divorce. He has 3 kids and he is dead broke. Like, that is how in the world am I going to be able to talk to this sailor, be able to coach them essentially, and be able to assist them to get to where they need to be? That's a completely different mind shift that I think a lot of people in the civilian world don't really get, because in this sense, it's like, hey, if I'm working at, I don't know, Bank of America, and I have somebody who's underneath me, if I'm not from the military perspective, and I have no clue what I'm talking about, I'd be like, well, I'm sorry to hear about that, John, but I can't do anything to help you. So for me, having the ability to deal with a lot of issues that are very unique, not, to the military, because everybody has struggles out in the real world, but to allow them the opportunity, or afford them the opportunity to come and talk to me, let's coach this out, let's see where we can go. I think those tough opportunities, or those tough instances that I had to go through as a division officer, as a department head, can definitely help me make, like, I'm not going to say make lives better in the civilian sector, but it will assist me and mold me to say, okay, hey, I've seen this before. You give me something harder. And of course, that's probably going to pop up and it's going to be something very unique that I've never seen. However, I have seen a lot of issues that not a lot of people have to deal with, and having to deal with those and work through them with my leadership above and below me would really help once I make that transition out.
Well said. Awesome. Myles, what's your reflection on how you feel like your service currently might help you in the next phase of your life?
Yeah, well said, Osei. I love that. So bottom line, the biggest thing that I've learned is just, take care of your people, and they'll take care of the mission. They'll take care of you. Right. And so I just know that I'm going to work my butt off no matter what, just similar, like I would work my, work for my team, at any aspect of it, and learn to continuously change and adapt to your opponent, right? Whether that's in a wartime environment or in a business model, right? You're always competing, you're always going. So, if you don't adapt and you don't change to the terrain, you risk vulnerabilities and things like that. And so, matched with everything that Osei said. But yeah, and for me, I've had a ton of challenges throughout my career. I felt like, there was just so many walls and things like that. And so, just like everybody else, right, developing that, continuing to rely on your skill set and not give up when things are hard. Because there's one thing, I think if something goes like the success is found in the things that we don't want to do. And I feel like, and that just means that, hey, when it's hard, you don't give up. And when you put that effort, that little bit, or like face those challenges front on, like you'll reap the benefits eventually. So.
Awesome, Myles. Well, since you have the microphone, Will Huff has a really good question here. Will, would you want to unmute yourself and ask directly? Start off with Myles, and then Osei take it after.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Harrison. And first, before I get to my question, really moved by the great participation tonight, including two old Army coaches and Coach John Mumford and Coach Tim Kish. Thanks for joining us. And then the strong representation of the Army Football Brotherhood coming out to support our brothers, literally from Navy and Air Force. But with that, I'll start with you, Myles. The question is, because you have a bunch of coaches on this call, folks who want to get better, what was the impact of coaches? And you can highlight from your youth, high school, or at the academy, and then I'll go over to you, especially, Osei, when you mentioned having a guy like Coach Kenny and Tamalolo as your position coach. So start with you, Myles. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'll be honest, so I got started a little bit later in my football career. And so like my middle school, and I had one coach really that was just like, hey, you should really just come out for football, and really just like saw something in me. Right. And I really see that whenever I take that and I apply that to like the airmen that I work with, or just like folks that I really like look past kind of like the outside and just really get that real feel on like who that individual is and what they have the potential to do, and where they could be and stuff like that. And just know that whether that journey is short or long, invest some time into them. Because I know like in middle school, if I didn't have that coach, which is very unique, because he's actually his daughter's now a freshman at the Air Force Academy, so he still comes up, and so we're still connected in that way. While I was at the academy, Coach Burton was my position coach at the time, and he was just one of those things that would not accept anything less than your max effort and your dedication to the program. And so, I mean, the bottom line is like, he didn't care what year you were. If you weren't showing up to the things that you needed to show up to, if you weren't studying the film, if you couldn't answer the questions and put out in the weight room and on the field, I mean, you weren't going to play. And so I think like establishing those very clear expectations and those guidelines, and just making sure that we execute them and check us when we're not, I think just always kept us pretty humble, and always ready for the next week.
Awesome, Myles. Osei, who are your most influential coaches?
Definitely Coach Nehemiah. He's just a great person overall. And I'll be perfectly honest, despite I really didn't play much for him, but I feel like he is the one, because he is the tree, and Coach Nehemiah is one of those branches. I'm going to have to go with Paul Johnson as well. The dude was as tough as nails, and he knew it, he lived it, and he instilled that in Navy football. I think he made Navy football what it was, and I don't want to say what it is now, because I think there's been a shift in mentalities at Navy, but Coach Johnson and Coach Nehemiah are the two that really have influenced me the most, because those guys were, as emotional as Coach Nehemiah can be. The dude was tough, and he was so competitive. I remember being at the academy on shore duty and playing a pickup basketball game with him, and he's hacking me left and right just because he didn't want to lose. Here I am, 20 years his junior, and I'm running laps around him, but he's just like, no, I'm not going to let you, I'm not going to let you beat me. So the competitiveness and the toughness that those two instilled in us will live with me throughout, the rest of my life.
Yeah, our coaches do hold a very special place in our hearts, and thank you for your service, all of the coaches that are on this call right now, because it is a service. Alexander Carlson, you have a really good question. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask?
Yes, good evening, everybody. My name is Alex Carlson. I live in Spotsylvania, Virginia. Multi-discipline coach, spent a lot of time on the rugby side of the house now, but we're doing a big thing in our county here with trying to show these kids these different opportunities, whether it's enrolling in college or enlisting or whatever else. And so my question to either of you, whoever would like to take it, is what would be your 15 to 30-second pitch and advice to like a rising junior or senior, maybe even a freshman or a sophomore that's considering military service at an academy versus a traditional college? You know, when did you make that turn to say, hey, I could go to Alabama or LSU or wherever else, whether recruited or not, but how did you make that turn? How did you look inside to say that the service academy was that why and that thing you needed in your life?
So for me, I honestly, it was tough for me because my parents didn't want me to go to the Naval Academy. They were against the military. This is during the war in Iraq, because I was being recruited in 2003. So we were deep into, being forward deployed, launching, Tomahawks into whatever country we were launching them into. So they were very against it. However, after some prodding from the coaches and saying, hey, this is what it is, this is what it's going to be like. My parents were like, okay, all right, forget all the war stuff. You'll deal with that later. You need to go here like right now. And it was one of the best decisions that my parents and I came to go to the Naval Academy, because if you want to have the ability to lead people, meet some of the best people in the world, establish relationships that are lifelong, and get a world-class education, what more do you need? That's more than enough for me, and that should be more than enough for any individual that, hey, wants to play Division I football. Yeah, I get it. They run a triple option. Okay, got it. But you're going to get an education that is top-notch from either of the service academies. You're going to meet some great people within your company and on the football team, of course. And you're going to interact with leaders, or you're going to get opportunities to interact with leadership that you've never seen or have never interacted with before. And listening and learning and just being able to soak in everything that you get will pay dividends later on in your life. And that's what it's done for me, because I've taken a lot of that and applied it to what I'm doing now. It's just being able to listen and learn from some of the great leaders that have gone through, Air Force Academy, Naval Academy, West Point, Coast Guard Academy, any service academy that you can think of. There's some great leaders out there that can teach you a lot.
Myles,
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in my experience, it's almost like flipped. So my dad wanted me to go to the Air Force Academy, and I did not want to go. I actually had offers from like Notre Dame, OU, some big schools. I actually signed or verbally committed to Texas Tech, and my dad basically, asked me to switch over to the Air Force Academy on signing day, and I did. I had some, fellow folks in the area, some of which played with Osei, and I chose to go to the Air Force Academy. I never looked back, never wondered, what it would have been like. Because I think growing up, they didn't really have a lot of options. So it's just like, you're going to go to school. You're going to go play somewhere. You're going to, get playing time. You're going to try to go to NFL, everything like that. And I was looking, my scope was so right in front of me. But whenever you show up to the academy, along with all the brotherhood and everything that Osei was saying, it's just it's the environments that you're going to be challenged every day in every way imaginable, physically, mentally, emotionally. And it's just, you're going to find yourself growing in ways that you just never thought you would. What I do know about the academies is like the opportunities that are there are just almost endless. I mean, if there's something that you want to do, you can go to an academy and do it. One of the other things too is just coming out of it and just knowing that whether or not you get hurt or not, you still have a top tier education. You still have job opportunities. You still have basically a career ahead of you that you're going to be a part of. That, I mean, there's there's operations, there's missions, there's things that you would never have dreamed of that you have opportunities to be a part of. And I'm just like, I loved every moment of it. I to be honest, I didn't expect to ever still be in at this time when I was looking back and I was a cadet. But here I am, and I wouldn't imagine my life any other way.
Awesome. And so we have time for one last question from one of our very own soldier coaches who've been with us for a long time. Manny Lamson, you have a great question. Go ahead and ask, close us out?
Yeah, it's a deeper one, but for those who aren't in the military here, but are coaches as well, this can be applied to a younger team that doesn't have the mentality and the brotherhood of an academy. But being a flight commander, ADO, et cetera, where we have a wide diverse of airmen and sailors, what are some traits or leadership skills you guys have learned to keep that bond close, right? Like esprit de corps, fight for the mission, support the wing. What are some little tips and tricks you got to keep it simple?
Yeah, I'll start off. OC, you hit the first one. So a big thing is, depending on your demographic and stuff, what I found is just like, I mean, a lot of it has to be like that idealization of like if you're in that leadership position, you're in the fight with them. And so, because it just comes with, if you're not able to do the same tasks as the things that your folks, you're expecting of your folks, like nowadays, that's just one of those things that, in my experience, that can really weigh on their perception of you. And so, just be willing to always be willing to be in there with them, do that, trust them, always trust that they're individuals and challenge them, and just know that like, hey, when they mess up, depending on how bad it is, like you brush it off and you move on, you address it, but it's not the end of the world. Y'all are still a team. You're going to keep going and just keep fighting, because there really isn't a lot of time or space to really dwell on a lot of stuff, right? But it's super important to always address it, and kind of my thoughts on that.
Osei, what's your tricks?
Yeah, I think Myles, the one thing that he said that resonates with me is being there with your airmen, your sailors, your Marines. Like, you're not above as an officer, as a commissioned officer. You're not above what your sailors do. So taking the opportunity to, hey, I always like this example on my first tour again. There's these things on ships that are called eductors, and they're utilized to remove water from the ship and put it outside of the ship. So for me, one of ours had failed, and we had to remove it. We got a new one in, we had to remove it, take it off, all that good stuff. So I'm down there turning wrenches with my DC-3, my DC firemen, and with my chief handling everything else, because at the end of the day, what they see is, hey, Ensign Asante is not above turning wrenches. He enjoys this just as much as we do. And that instills that team mentality from the jump. And it's one of my favorite things to do. As you go up the ladder, you're further removed from that, but you do that and you're solid.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to close out. And what we're going to do is the final last words are going to be from our participants to talk smack. So this is the SmackDown minute as we close out for this rivalry. This is the best part. And because the game is at home for the Naval Academy and Marine Corps Stadium, Osei, you get to go second. So you get to respond. So to start us off, Myles, you got your 1 minute of smack. Let's go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So one, I'm super excited just because like that energy and that field brings that environment. And so I've got a couple of big defensive players in my squadron that's going to be on there. So I'll be at that stadium cheering them on, be wearing my blue. And I just think this year Navy really is it's one of those games that we're just going to roll over you guys.
Oh, they come on strong at the end, because that was kind of weak in the beginning until that last second.
Wow.
I had to call them out. So kudos to you. So I'm gonna toss the ball over to you, Osei. Give it to him.
Well, Air Force has done an okay job this season. I think the schedule has been extremely weak. They have had no competition, and the new the head coach at Navy, Coach Newberry, has been foaming at the mouth to smack Coach Calhoun in the face. So he's going to utilize this opportunity to send a message to know that, hey, just because we are 2-3, 2-4, you guys are undefeated, doesn't mean anything, because we're going to smack you in the face for 4 quarters. Thank you and
Wonderful.
Good night.
And at the end, we're arm in arm, serving the country. That's the best part about this. We could talk smack and then hug and then have these awesome moments. And just so everyone knows, none of this is possible. The Commander-in-Chief Trophy Series webinars with Soldiers to Sidelines and all the services that Soldiers to Sidelines delivers to our soldier coaches, not possible without your help and the contributions of our sponsors and our donors. So we just say thank you so much for continuing to support this effort. And, you know, I just get prouder by the month as we turn out more and more soldier coaches. We're currently at 1,428 certified soldier coaches, influencing over 71,000 young athletes. And because everybody is dedicated to the art of leadership and coaching, we eventually are going to have tens of thousands of soldier coaches influencing millions of young athletes. So thank you so much, everyone. I hope everyone has a great night, and we will see you next time.